All right, guys, welcome back to another post-market recap. This is Brocco with Uncharted Territory. Before we get into today's action, I do quickly want to mention we have a Black Friday sale live right now. If you head to our website at wap.com/uncharted, you can use code BF2025 at checkout and get $350 off of our annual membership, which comes out to about $1.10 per day for the year. Now into today's action, we had a broad market rally today. All the indexes closing near the highs of the day. NASDAQ closing up 2.5% on the day, which is really impressive considering it's a short week, holiday week. I'm not sure how many people had this on their bingo card today. I certainly didn't. You know, historically on these shorter weeks, you can see some lower trading volumes, maybe some more muted, choppy-ish price action, but that was not the case today. We had that gap up against the intermediate trend today. Qs undercut the VWAP at the open, reclaimed, made new highs on the day, and then we just traded nice and high and tight all day long. We surfed the moving averages right up into the close. Very shallow pullbacks intraday, very few of them. You really had all the hallmarks of a trend day in the making in the first hour or two of the day with, a lot of individual names showing out versus the indexes. You had semis and tech leading, specifically semis, which is, what you want to see, right? Thursday and Friday, we really saw tech leading lower and even lagging a bit on Friday, but they really took charge today at the open, which was really nice to see. And, usually when you have a weak market in a correction or distributing, these big gap ups can often get faded by the close. But that was not the case today. We had a 1% gap up, and the low of the day was put in the first candle of the day. So really impressive action. And, one thing I was seeing a lot on Twitter today or in Discord was people talking about the low volume rally up into the 50-day, right? Now, while we did trade lower volume today, typically if you go back and study any shallower corrections within an uptrend, right? So like your, call it 8 to 12% corrections. Typically, you'll see the market rally up on lower volume almost every occasion. The market always bottoms and sells off on higher volume in a correction, and it grinds back up on lower volume. That's just how markets work. We really started capitulating near the end of the day on Thursday and Friday, which were the two high volume days. And then, that's where a lot of your big buyers are. And then today is mostly just, late buyers chasing and a lot of short covering, I imagine. Because I'm not sure any shorts really were ready for a move like this today and probably got a little bit greedy after Thursday's bar. So if you really just go study, if you can go back just the last couple of years and look at, for example, the late 2023 correction where, the NASDAQ pulled back, I think around, 12%. And we bottomed on a pretty high volume bar. And then after that, we had like 10 green days in a row and the volume just disappeared for the next 2 weeks. Right? There was no like really big upside volume day. It just like kind of steadily declined lower. Even this April correction from 2024, right? We bottomed on a pretty high volume day. And then after that, the low was put in, but volume just, kind of fell off for the next few weeks. And that led to a 20% move in just 3 months, right? Now, obviously, if you have a correction where it's more of like a panic and a crash, like a August 5th type moment of last year, or like the tariff crash from earlier this year, right? You're going to have VIX at, 50, 60, markets below the 200 day. You're naturally just going to see a lot more volume anomalies and a lot of just crazy volume days. So it's important to put it into context, right? This is a really shallow correction. We only pulled back 8% on the NASDAQ, and we still traded above the 20-week moving average. So we're still within a bigger picture uptrend, right? So you really have to go compare it to other previous corrections similar to this, not necessarily compare it to like an April, which was just total chaos, right? So this is much more orderly, not as crazy. I mean, Thursday's bar was pretty scary, but when you get shallower corrections like this of 8 to 10 to 12%, market's always going to grind up on lower volume. That's just how it works. And I've seen tons of people, during corrections like this in the past who, tried to short the low volume rally into the MAs and end up getting smoked when that low volume rally doesn't come back down and it just keeps going to new highs, right? And the volume even today wasn't even that bad. I mean, NASDAQ was up 2.6%, which is already impressive considering, that bad bar on Thursday. But we traded our average 50-day volume today. We didn't even have a below average volume day, right? You have to put the last two bars into context. Thursday, we had almost a 5% decline off the high day on the NASDAQ. and we closed at the lows of the day. I mean, that was a crazy day. VIX made a 50% intraday move that day. So naturally, you're just going to have a very, very high volume day there. And then Friday, we had a really wide bar on OPEX. On those option expiration days, those monthly option expirations, you're going to see a lot of high volume, right? From options expiring and whatever. We've seen it time and time again. So naturally, it's going to be really hard for the market to put in a higher volume bar today, or even a really high volume bar. But we traded more than the 50-day average volume, 60 million shares. That's pretty impressive, especially considering it's a short holiday week where if it was a full trading week, we'd probably see even more volume, right? So overall, I mean, I was pretty impressed by today. I think the volume was good. I think the price action was great. We saw a lot of individual names really stand out today for the first time. So, we're up into the 50-day, right? We're up into declining 20 EMA on SPY and the Qs. We're still within Thursday's bar, and it's going to be really hard to get some really clean setups or more orderly price action until we can get above that Thursday high. That's going to be like a big level to watch going forward. So not out of the woods yet, but I wouldn't be in such a rush to short this just because we're into a moving average line, and we had like lower volume than Friday and Thursday. Because we traded our 50-day average volume today, right? What more can you ask for? Typically, if the market were to get tight for a couple days, pull back and make a higher low, and we got a fall through day to the upside, that's where you'll see some more aggressive buyers come in and maybe a little bit of a higher volume day than the previous days. So that's what I'll be on the lookout for. But overall today, I was pretty impressed. IWM was the real standout the last 2 days. Did not break Thursday's low. SPY and the Qs broke Thursday's low. IWM didn't. We had a gap up. We left that gap open on Friday, closed strong, and we actually took out Thursday's high today. Really impressive. Closed up almost 2%. We undercut the weekly 20 EMA and trying to remount right now. So we'll be watching this going forward, but that was nice to see. Nvidia, a little bit of relative weakness today. It's actually down a little bit in the after hours. It's selling off a little bit. It's back flat on the day. So maybe looking at a little gap down tomorrow. This relative weakness in the morning was a little bit concerning to me. This is like the godfather of the AI run. So this had news failure on earnings on Thursday. Tried to sell off Friday, wicked back up and closed near 180 for OPEX, and traded an inside bar today. Semis really showed out today. We had the SMH up 4%, SOXX up 4.5%. You saw Soxel up 13%. On the day. So would have liked to see Nvidia participate a little bit more, given the fact that semis were leading. To see this up less than the NASDAQ is a little bit concerning. Traded a decent high volume bar today. So we'll see. We'll have to see going forward. This is definitely going to be one to watch. As Nvidia's earnings was the catalyst for the sell off on Thursday, right? The sell the news. So will be important to see how this trades. This 180 is a huge level, and going to be watching this going forward into the rest of the week. Obviously, Google, just absolute monster. Kind of upset about this. I feel like I really fumbled this. I mean, the relative strength this showed last week was just absolutely insane. This thing was gapping up just so much overnight when the market gapped up, and it just made higher lows, Tuesday through Friday last week, and obviously going crazy today, up 6.5%. This is kind of like that beach ball underwater setup, right? Where this thing wants to go up so bad, but the market's maybe not optimal. And then as soon as you get a relief rally on the market, this thing's just going to, break out in a massive way. It's actually up more in the after hours on some catalyst with Meta. It's up 9% from Friday's close now. So really impressive action there. One of the first days we saw some really notable moves in some of the relative strength names. A couple on my list, obviously Google. AVGO was up on some huge volume today, up 11%. Wild move for this name. It has an ATR of $16.70. It was up $37 today. Back up into the highs. One of those names that's just been going sideways for 3 months as the market's been correcting. And traded 47 million shares today. So more than double its average 50-day volume. So really impressive and nice to see this continuing to lead. ONDS, another name. This thing's been all over the place. I tried to find my way in myself one of these days here, but just couldn't stay in. And then, of course, as soon as the market has that first big relief rally day, You're seeing all these names start to come out of their patterns. This thing was up 30% today. Really incredible action. Tried to break down on Friday, couldn't, and then finally takes out this range and gets over a pretty big level by the close. So that was nice to see. GRAL, another one, Chartmaster in our Discord, absolutely crushed this name today. This was another name that I tried last week, but was a little early on it. Up 19% today, just your classic kind of high tight flag. A little volatile on the base, which is going to be, natural if the market's in a correction, but hard to ignore, a setup like this when the market's pulling back, because, if that market does come off the lows, this thing's just going to explode, right? So Light, another name, this is a name that TSDR has been watching, up 17% today. Massive move. Just another one with crazy RS. This thing's just been trending up for months, and then market kind of peaked early November, and this just continued to build out this base up here, and even made new highs on Wednesday last week. So really impressive there. CIEN, another name in that group, traded 14 million shares today off the 50-day on Friday, left over this big open gap. Still in Thursday's range, but another just monster name coming out of a huge base and really building out kind of its first pattern since this run on this earnings gap up in September. So we'll see how that builds out. Open, another one. I mean, this thing's been all over the place, but this thing was super strong today. Was up about 14% at the highs of the day, came into the 50-day. Still a lot of work to do here, in my opinion. I didn't really see a buy setup on this. I would need this to get much tighter than it is, but one of those names that really showed out today and maybe worth keeping an eye on. Didn't really trade a ton of volume today, so we'll see how the next couple days look on this. Bitcoin, Ethereum, big moves off those Friday bars. So, I talked about this in Sunday scans. I talked about this volume on IBIT on Friday. It traded 233% of its average daily volume on Friday, which was super notable. It was the highest volume day since inception on the IBIT Bitcoin ETF. This is the most traded Bitcoin ETF. And to see that kind of volume really, signals some capitulation, especially when you get 3 days of increasing volume and then, didn't really have a huge down day, but traded tons of volume, led to this reversal. You also had its highest weekly volume ever last week too. Traded 266% of its average weekly volume last week. So just massive volume there, and definitely some signs of your first real capitulatory low on this. So this was one of those names that you really want to see stabilize a little bit if the market's going to attempt any sort of rally, right? So that was really nice to see. ETHA was strong as well, up 9% today. Didn't really get that capitulation volume on this. Saw some elevated volume Wednesday through Friday, but followed through pretty well today. BMNR had a big day today, up 20%. Little undercut and rally at the 200-day. Really nice volume today. Highest volume since August on this today. So nice to see some oversold bounces there, right? That's a start. Any market correction is going to start off as an oversold bounce. So we'll have to see how these trade now going forward. It's going to be important, right? So that crypto action was nice to see today, because we really haven't seen crypto lead like that for a while now, really since IBIT lost the 200-day down here. So to see that lead today was really nice. MAGS, the MAG 7 ETF, reclaimed the 50-day today. Almost got near Thursday's high today. So nice action on the mags here. Kind of undercut this base here and reclaimed. So we'll see how this acts the next couple of days. But nice to see the MAG 7 leading, looking stronger than the Qs and SPY right now, reclaiming all the moving averages. And I think that's pretty much all I had in my notes today. That was all the notable stuff that I saw today. I didn't take any trades today. I just sat tight. I am leaving on Wednesday morning to go visit some family, so I'm only going to be here today and tomorrow, and I didn't really want to have any positions on that I was going to be, thinking about, over the holidays or anything. So I'm taking this week pretty slow, just kind of monitoring stuff. Really in no rush right now. I didn't really get any FOMO or anything today. Even if the market has bottomed, if you do go study any of those corrections we talked about, or really any corrections in the past, a lot of the best setups that are offered after a correction and a lot of the biggest moves that occur after a correction often come multiple weeks after the low is put in. Most of the time, especially in a shallower correction like this, like an 8 to 12% correction, the best setups usually occur even after the market has made new all-time highs or new highs out of that correction. So something to keep in mind, right? Go study some of those corrections and kind of go through them bar for bar and kind of, live through the days and, what you'd be thinking, what your thoughts would be. This rally back in the late 2023 was really strong off the lows, and it kind of locked everybody out, and it was really hard to get involved in stuff. But after this setup here, we kind of retested the all-time highs and put in this nice little base here. And once we took that out, that was when some of the best setups really presented themselves. You have clear area to risk off of. Stocks have kind of cooled off their overbought conditions and gone sideways for a little bit. That's when you see some of the best setups. So, don't feel like you need to chase this right now if you don't have much exposure or you're worried you're going to mix the next leg up, right? If we're going to, continue in a meaningful way, there's going to be plenty of time to get involved. Maybe today was a good day to put on a little bit of exposure in some names that you liked. If you did, and you got some cushion on those, good job. But for anybody who didn't, right, if you've been sitting in cash the last few weeks and really haven't been making any contact, or you kind of don't have a great feel for the tape, don't feel like you had to buy a bunch of stuff today or that you're falling behind because you don't have exposure right now. It's likely going to take a little bit more time. You really want to see the indexes sort of try to, trade sideways a little bit, right? Get tight. You really want to see the VIX get back below 20, which we don't have yet. VIX above 20 still going to be vulnerable to some volatile price action, which can be tough to manage positions in. Really what I want to see is us to take out that Thursday's high from last week and how we act above that. If we continue and gap up tomorrow and push, and maybe even another day, probably vulnerable to a pretty harsh rejection where some big sellers are going to step in. So don't feel like you need to chase these gap ups and stuff. Market coming out of every correction always offers a great opportunity to start getting on positions and getting some traction back. So I see a lot of people kind of FOMOing right now and getting nervous and whatever, but you have plenty of time. You always do. So there's always going to be another rally, always going to be another setup. So don't worry about that. But really nice action today. I'm curious how we follow through tomorrow. I don't really have any trades planned. We're getting some pretty wild action in the after hours. Obviously, Google was up. Nvidia, AMD down a little bit. SNDK is up big in the after hours, moving off a inclusion in one of the ETFs, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And a couple other moves on earnings in the after hours as well. So I'll be scanning pretty early in the morning tomorrow to see what's going on and what's moving. But yeah, that's your post-market recap video for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys after the close tomorrow.